On her 5th birthday, a silent little girl picked up a diamond ring worth a fortune. She didn't ask for money. She asked a stranger to sit with her. What followed: quiet choices, lawful love, and one brave promise would change a billionaire, a mother, and a child forever that day alone. The city woke before the sun. Seattle breathed in low gray tones, wet streets, humming traffic, the quiet rush of people already late for something important. Between two tall buildings hidden from most eyes, Maisie Quinn opened her own. She blinked, slowly, listening. Cars, footsteps, a distant siren that didn't scare her anymore. Maisie sat up on the flattened cardboard she slept on and rubbed her eyes with the sleeve of her oversized sweater. It slid past her fingers, almost swallowing her hand. She didn't mind. Big clothes were warmer. Today felt different. She counted on her fingers once, then again to be sure. 5. Maisie smiled just a little. "I'm 5 today," she whispered to no one. There was no cake, no candle, no song. But the number itself felt important, like a secret she carried in her pocket. She imagined what 5 might mean, maybe taller, maybe braver, maybe less invisible. She stood carefully brushing dust from her leggings and peeked out onto the sidewalk. Adults hurried past with coffee cups and glowing phones, coats buttoned tight against the cold. No one looked down. That was okay. Maisie had learned that being unnoticed was sometimes safer. Her stomach made a small aching sound. She pressed her hand against it, not angry, just patient. She'd find something later. She usually did. As she stepped into the flow of the city, her eyes caught reflections in shop windows, bright colors, warm lights, things meant for other lives. She paused at a bakery window for half a second. Cakes sat behind glass, perfect and untouched. For a moment she imagined one candle. Just one. Maisie turned away before the feeling grew too big. She had a rule about that. Don't want too much. Still, as she walked, one quiet wish followed her like a shadow, just don't be alone today. Maisie knew the city's rules, even if no one had ever taught them to her. Rule 1, keep moving. Rule 2, don't stare too long at things you can't have. Rule 3, if someone looks angry, go the other way. She walked with small, steady steps, her shoes slightly too tight, her pace careful enough to blend in. She had learned how to slip between crowds like a quiet thought no one finished. Families passed her, parents holding hands with children her size. She watched without jealousy, just curiosity. How did it feel to be guided like that? To be sure someone would stop when you stopped. Her chest tightened with a question she couldn't quite name. Near a crosswalk, she sat on a low concrete ledge and rested her feet. The city smelled like rain and coffee and warm bread from somewhere nearby. Her stomach growled again, louder this time. Soon she murmured to herself. Sometimes when she was very tired, pictures floated into her head. A small kitchen, yellow curtains moving in the breeze, a woman humming while brushing her hair. Maisie frowned, trying to hold the image still, but it slipped away like fog. The more she reached for it, the faster it vanished. It's okay, she told herself softly, the way grown-ups used to say. She stood again and crossed the street with the light. Her reflection flickered in a glass building, small, bundled, serious beyond her years. Then something caught her eye. A brief flash, a sparkle out of place. Near the curb, just outside a busy cafe entrance, something lay half hidden in a shallow puddle. Not trash, not food. Maisie slowed. Her heart beat a little faster, not fear, but curiosity. She crouched carefully and reached out with 2 fingers. It was a small velvet box, dark blue, damp around the edges. Maisie hesitated. Her rules didn't say anything about this. She opened the box. Light exploded quietly inside. A diamond ring rested there, impossibly bright, as if it didn't belong to the street or to her world at all. Maisie stared at the ring. She had seen shiny things before in windows on fingers that moved too fast, but never this close. The diamond caught the gray daylight and broke it into tiny pieces like trapped stars. Her breath caught. For one small, dangerous moment, a thought slipped in. Food, warmth, a place to sit that wasn't cold. Her fingers tightened around the velvet box. Money could do many things. Even she knew that. But another voice rose quietly inside her, older than hunger. If it's not yours, it can't fix you. Maisie swallowed. She turned the ring gently, noticing something carved inside the band. Tiny letters. She couldn't read them, but she traced them anyway, as if they mattered. They did. She looked around. People rushed past, laughing, arguing, living lives full of noise. No one noticed the ring. No one noticed her. She could close the box. She could walk away. Her stomach growled again, sharp this time. Maisie pressed her lips together, fighting the pull of need. She thought of the bakery window, of candles, of being 5. Slowly, she stood up. "Okay," she whispered, as if making a promise. She scanned the crowd, looking not for help, but for someone who looked connected to the ring. Someone searching without knowing it yet. That's when she saw him. A tall man in a charcoal coat stood near a black car, one hand on his phone, his voice low and tense. He looked important. Busy. The kind of adult Maisie usually avoided. Then he paused mid-sentence. His hand patted his coat pocket. Once. Twice. His face changed. Not anger. Fear. Maisie's heart thudded. She stepped forward before she could stop herself, clutching the small box with both hands. Her voice felt very far away as she spoke. "Sir," the man didn't hear her. She tried again, louder this time, her courage shaking but steady enough to hold. "Sir, did you drop something?" He looked down, and in that moment, with a diamond between them and a birthday, no one knew about, two very different lives quietly collided. The man stopped walking. Not all at once, just enough for time to notice. He lowered his phone slowly, eyes narrowing as they locked onto the small velvet box in Maisie's hands. For a second, the noise of the street seemed to fall away, as if the city itself was holding its breath. "Yes," he said, distracted, his voice still halfway inside a business call. Maisie swallowed. Her fingers felt cold around the box. "I think you dropped this." She held it out carefully like it might break. The man stared. Then he reached out, took the box, and opened it. The color drained from his face. "That's," his voice caught. He stopped himself, closing the lid quickly, as if protecting the ring from the world. His free hand went to his chest, pressing flat against his coat. He ended the call without explanation. Up close, he looked different than Maisie had expected. Younger, tired in a way that wasn't about sleep. His eyes moved from the box back to her face, finally seeing her not as a blur, not as part of the street. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "By the curb," Maisie answered, "near the cafe." He nodded slowly. "That ring, it means more than money." Maisie didn't respond. She just waited. The man crouched down to her level, careful not to invade her space. "My name is Declan Cross," he said, quieter now. "Thank you for returning it." She shrugged slightly. "It wasn't mine." Something shifted in Declan's expression, surprise, then something heavier. He glanced at her clothes, her shoes, the way she held herself, like someone who didn't expect to be helped. "You could have kept it," he said gently. Maisie shook her head. It wouldn't feel right. Declan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "You're very honest," he said. She didn't smile. Honesty to Maisie wasn't something special. It was just the rule that kept the inside of her chest from hurting more than it already did. Declan stood up slowly, still holding the velvet box like it might disappear if he loosened his grip. That ring, he said mostly to himself, belonged to my sister. Maisie looked at him, her eyes wide but calm. She gave it to me before she passed away. Declan continued. I carry it when I need to remember what matters. The words settled between them, quiet and heavy, but not frightening. Maisie nodded once, as if that made sense. Declan glanced at his watch. His meeting had already started. His driver hovered nearby, uncertain. The city pressed forward again, impatient. Declan hesitated. There were 1,000 things he should do next. Instead, he stayed. You did the right thing, he said, and I want to thank you properly. Maisie tilted her head. Thank me, how, he thought quickly. A reward. Something you want. Her eyes flicked just for a heartbeat toward the bakery window across the street. Cake still sat behind the glass, unchanged, beautiful. Then she looked away. Declan noticed. Food, he offered. A toy clothes. Maisie hugged her arms around herself, shrinking slightly. I don't need those. Declan frowned, confused. Everyone needs something. She hesitated. Her voice dropped lower. Today's my birthday. That stopped him. Your birthday? She nodded. I'm 5. The number landed harder than it should have. Declan imagined 5-year-old parties he'd attended, balloons, gifts, rooms full of people pretending joy was loud. And you're alone? He asked carefully. Maisie didn't answer right away. She looked down at the sidewalk, tracing a crack with her shoe. I usually am, she said. Declan felt an unfamiliar pressure behind his eyes. He cleared his throat. Well, birthdays shouldn't be like that. He gestured toward the bakery. Would you like a cake? Maisie's fingers curled into her sleeves. I don't want to cause trouble, she whispered. Something in Declan broke open, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to hurt. Looking after a child, he said softly, isn't trouble. Maisie looked up at him, then really looked. For the first time that day, hope flickered. Declan waited for her to smile. She didn't. Instead, Maisie stared at the ground, as if the answer she was searching for was written somewhere between the cracks. I don't need cake, she said slowly. Declan blinked. You don't? She shook her head. I mean, cake is nice, but it goes away. He wasn't prepared for that. Then what do you want? He asked, keeping his voice steady. Maisie's shoulders rose and fell with a small breath. She glanced up at him, then quickly away again, as if eye contact made things too real. Can you... She began, then stopped. Declan waited. He didn't rush her. Can you sit with me, she whispered, just a little. The words were quiet. They hit him like a collision. Declan felt his chest tighten sharply, like something had reached inside and closed a fist around his heart. He turned his face away before he could stop himself. Around them, the city kept moving. No one noticed the billionaire standing still or the little girl asking for something no amount of money could buy. You don't want anything else? He asked, voice rough. Maisie shook her head. Just that. Declan nodded once, then slowly lowered himself onto the stone bench beside her. They sat. No speeches, no promises. Just two people sharing the same space. After a moment, Maisie's feet swung slightly, not touching the ground. She leaned back, relaxed in a way she hadn't all day. Declan stared straight ahead, blinking hard. He hadn't cried in years. Not at funerals, not in boardrooms, not alone at night. But sitting there beside a 5-year-old girl who had returned a priceless ring and asked only not to be alone. His eyes filled. He let the tears fall silently where no one could see. And in that quiet, fragile moment, Declan Cross knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't a reward. This was a responsibility. They sat longer than Declan realized. The bench was cold stone, but Maisie didn't seem to mind. Her legs swung slowly, a quiet rhythm that made the moment feel real. Declan glanced at his watch again, then turned it face down. Would it be okay, he asked gently, if we added one small thing? Maisie looked at him cautious but curious. A cake, he said. Not because you asked. Because it's your birthday. She hesitated. Just a small one. Just a small one, he agreed. Inside the bakery, the air was warm and sweet. Maisie stayed close, careful not to touch anything. Declan let her choose without rushing her. She pointed to a modest chocolate cake with a single candle. One is enough, she said. Declan paid. The cashier smiled at Maisie and whispered, "Happy birthday." Maisie froze, then whispered back, "Thank you," like it was a rare word. They sat at a small table by the window. Declan lit the candle. "Make a wish," he said. Maisie stared at the flame. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she leaned forward and blew it out quickly. Declan smiled. "What did you wish for?" She shook her head. "If I say it, it won't work." He respected that. After cake, Declan returned with a small brown paper bag. Inside was a simple teddy bear, soft, nothing flashy. "For later," he said, "if you want." Maisie hugged it once, carefully. Not too tight. Not yet. When they stepped back outside, Declan took out his phone, but this time not for business. He dialed a number saved under a name he trusted. "Marisol," he said quietly. "I need your help. I'm with a child who needs protection done properly." Maisie watched him, listening to his tone. Calm. Serious. Kind. "You're not in trouble," he told her before she could worry. "I promise." She nodded, trusting him not because he was rich, but because he had stayed. Marisol Vega arrived 20 minutes later. She didn't rush. She didn't stare. She knelt to Maisie's level, the way Declan had her voice warm and steady. "Hi, Maisie. I'm Marisol. I help kids and families." Maisie clutched the teddy bear, nodding once. Marisol asked simple questions. Where she slept, what she liked to draw, whether she felt safe right now. No pressure, no fear. Maisie answered what she could. Declan stood a respectful distance away, hands folded, saying nothing unless asked. "You did the right thing," calling Marisol said quietly to him. "Thank you." They walked together to a nearby community shelter, clean, staffed, calm. Paperwork happened. Names were written down. Maisie was offered clean clothes and a warm drink. She didn't resist. Before Declan left, she tugged gently at his coat. "You're coming back?" she asked. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Tomorrow." Marisol raised an eyebrow at him. "Only if you mean it, I do," Declan replied. That night, Declan sat alone in his penthouse, the diamond ring locked safely away. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt hollow. He called another number, Rowan Pierce, a private investigator known for discretion. "I need you to find a mother," Declan said. Quietly, legally, no shortcuts. At the shelter, Maisie lay in a real bed, Teddy tucked under her arm. As she drifted off, she whispered her birthday wish into the dark. "Please let him come back." Declan came back the next day, and the next. Maisie began to smile more easily. She drew pictures, houses with yellow curtains, stick figures holding hands. Declan kept every drawing. One afternoon, as they colored together in the common room, Maisie paused. "My mom used to sing," she said softly. "I don't remember the words, just the tune." Declan's chest tightened. "What was her name?" he asked carefully. Maisie frowned. "Tessa, I think." That night, Rowan called. "We have a match," he said. "Tessa Hale reported her daughter missing 6 months ago. She's been searching ever since." Declan closed his eyes. "Find her," he said, "and prepare for a reunion done right." At the shelter across town, Tessa stared at a flyer she'd taped up weeks ago. The edges were worn, the ink fading. "Maisie," she whispered, pressing the paper to her chest. Her phone rang. Miss Hale, Rowan said. "We believe we've found your daughter." Tessa dropped to her knees, crying not from pain, but from hope. Across the city, Maisie slept with her teddy, unaware that threads long pulled apart were finally being drawn together. And Declan Cross stood at his window, looking out over the lights, knowing the next step would change all their lives. The room was small, warm, and quiet. Two chairs faced each other near a low table. A box of tissues sat in the middle untouched. Sunlight slipped through the window in pale stripes settling gently on the floor. Maisie sat with her teddy on her lap, feet dangling above the ground. Marisol knelt beside her, calm and steady. "Your mom is here," Marisol said softly. "She's been looking for you for a very long time." Maisie's fingers tightened around the teddy. "She didn't forget me?" she asked. Marisol shook her head. "Never." The door opened slowly. Tessa Hale stepped inside. She looked thinner than the photos Rowan had shown Declan, her eyes tired. But when they met Maisie's, something inside her broke open completely. "Maisie." Her voice trembled, afraid to be too loud. Maisie stood up. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Maisie whispered. Mommy Tessa dropped to her knees. "Yes. Yes, I'm here." They reached for each other at the same time. Tessa wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her, as if the world might try to take her away again. Maisie buried her face into her mother's shoulder, breathing her in, as if memorizing the feeling. Declan stood near the door, unmoving. He didn't step forward. He didn't speak. He let the moment belong to them. "I looked everywhere," Tessa sobbed softly. "Everywhere. I tried to find you." Maisie replied, her voice small but sure. Marisol gave them time. No one rushed the reunion. No one interrupted the silence that followed, the kind that heals instead of hurts. Eventually, Tessa looked up and noticed Declan. Her expression shifted, gratitude mixed with uncertainty. "This is Declan Cross," Marisol explained. "He found Maisie, and he did everything by the book." Tessa nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said, her voice still shaking. Declan inclined his head. "She found me first, and in that room with two chairs and a lifetime between them, something fragile and precious was finally put back where it belonged." The meeting room at Marisol's office smelled faintly of coffee and paper. Tessa sat with Maisie beside her, one arm protectively wrapped around her daughter. Declan sat across from them, hands folded, listening. Marisol placed a thin folder on the table. "We need to talk about next steps," she said calmly. "This isn't about taking Maisie away from anyone. It's about stability and safety." Tessa nodded, though her shoulders were tense. "She stays with me," Tessa said firmly. "Yes," Marisol replied. "That's the goal." Declan exhaled quietly. "There's something else," Marisol continued. "During the background checks, something unusual came up." She slid a page across the table, old records, names connected by faint lines. Declan's eyes widened. "Tessa Hale. Formerly Tessa Coleman," Marisol said. "Your family name appears here, Mr. Cross." Declan stared at the document, his mind racing. "My aunt," he said slowly. "She left the family decades ago." Tessa stiffened. "My mother," she said carefully. "She never talked about her family." The room filled with a new kind of tension, not anger, but disbelief. "So, we're related?" Tessa asked. "Yes," Declan answered honestly. "Second cousins." Silence stretched. Tessa's grip on Maisie tightened. "I don't want money," she said sharply. "And I don't want anyone trying to take my child." Declan met her gaze, steady and sincere. "I don't want that either. I won't overstep. Everything I do will go through Marisol." Maisie looked between them, confused. "Are you mad?" she asked. Both adults turned to her immediately. "No," Tessa said, softening. "Not mad," Declan added, "just surprised." Marisol leaned forward. "We move slowly. Together. With boundaries." Tessa nodded reluctantly. Trust, Declan realized, wasn't built with generosity. It was built with restraint. Later that afternoon, Declan and Tessa stood outside the building while Maisie colored inside with Marisol. Rain misted the airlight and quiet. I need to say this clearly, Tessa began. I'm grateful, but I need to stand on my own feet. Declan nodded. I understand. I'll accept help, she continued, only if it doesn't replace me as her mother. It won't, Declan said. I promise. They stood in silence for a moment. Why are you doing this? Tessa asked finally. Declan thought of the ring, of the bench, of a 5-year-old asking him to sit. Because she reminded me who I was supposed to be, he answered. Inside, Maisie finished her drawing and held it up proudly, a house with yellow curtains. 3 figures stood outside, spaced apart but connected by a long line. What's that? Marisol asked. Maisie smiled. It's a rope, so no one gets lost again. That evening, Declan called Rowan one last time. No more digging, he said. We found what we needed. As Declan left, Maisie ran to him. You're still coming tomorrow? She asked. Yes, he said. But I won't crowd you. She considered that, then hugged him quickly. That's okay, she said. I know where you are now. Declan watched mother and daughter walk away together, knowing his role had changed. Not savior, not owner, just family, careful, lawful, and present. The first night back together felt unreal. Not because the room was fancy, it wasn't. The shelter's family wing was simple, clean, and warm. But Maisie slept in a real bed again, with a blanket that didn't smell like rain. She curled around her teddy bear like it was an anchor, and for once her breathing stayed slow and steady. Tessa sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall. You're here, she whispered, as if saying it could make it permanent. You're really here. When Marisol finally guided Tessa toward the hallway, Tessa kept glancing back like the room might disappear the moment she turned away. Outside, Declan waited near the lobby, hands in his coat pockets, his posture careful, present, but not invading. She fell asleep, Tessa said as she approached him, her voice quiet with relief. Declan nodded. I'm glad. There was so much more he wanted to say, but he remembered what Marisol had told him. Boundaries are kindness, especially when emotions are loud. Tessa's gaze dropped to his watch, an expensive piece of metal that could have bought months of stability for someone like her. Her jaw tightened just slightly. Declan saw it and didn't flinch. Marisol mentioned you're looking for longer-term housing, he said calmly. Not luxury, just steady. Tessa held her arms tighter around herself. I'm looking, she replied. I don't want anything that comes with strings. Declan's throat moved as he swallowed. I don't want strings either. Tessa's eyes narrowed, not in anger, more like a shield returning to its place. People say that. Then they change the rules. Declan didn't argue. He simply nodded. You're right, he said. So let's write the rules down. The next morning, they met in Marisol's office, 3 adults around a table and a child coloring beside a window. On the page in front of them, Marisol wrote a simple agreement in plain language. Tessa is Maisie's mother and primary guardian. Declan offers support only with written consent. All decisions for Maisie go through Tessa and Marisol. No surprise purchases, no sudden plans. Declan can visit only at pre-agreed times unless invited. Tessa read every line slowly. Her hand trembled once, then steadied. This makes me feel like I can breathe, she admitted. Declan looked relieved. Me too. Housing came next. Tessa insisted on choosing the place herself. She didn't want a penthouse. She didn't want a charity home. She wanted something she could imagine paying for someday without Declan. So they visited modest apartments, quiet buildings, safe neighborhoods near transit, near a school. Declan kept his hands in his pockets, letting Tessa lead, letting her ask the questions, letting her decide what mattered. Maisie followed them like a small investigator, peeking into closets and tapping walls as if checking whether the space was real. Mommy, she whispered during the 3rd tour, does this one have sunlight? Tessa blinked. Yes, she said softly. It does. When they found it, a 2-bedroom on the 2nd floor with a tiny living room and a window that looked out on a maple tree, Tessa stood still for a long moment. "It's not perfect," she murmured. Declan spoke carefully. "It doesn't need to be perfect. Just yours." Tessa turned to him, the battle behind her eyes visible. "I can't afford the deposit right now." Declan waited. He didn't jump in with a solution. He let the silence be honest. Tessa exhaled shakily. Marisol said a bridge fund could be arranged. Short term. Declan nodded. Yes, a bridge, not a leash. They did it the right way. Paperwork, receipts, a time limit. Marisol witnessed the agreement. On moving day, Declan hired a small crew not to show off but to protect Tessa from exhaustion. He carried boxes himself anyway, sleeves rolled up, looking more human than billionaire. Maisie ran from room to room, laughing softly, like she was afraid laughter might wake her up. "This is my room," she announced, pointing at the smaller bedroom. Tessa crouched beside her. "It is." Maisie pressed her palm to the wall like it was a promise. "Can I draw a sun here?" Tessa smiled through tears she didn't let fall. "We'll put paper up, then you can draw as many suns as you want." Later, with the last box unpacked, they sat on the living room floor and ate simple takeout from paper containers. The air smelled like soy sauce and new beginnings. Maisie held up her teddy bear and looked at Declan. "Uncle Declan," she said suddenly, trying the title like a new shoe. Declan froze. Tessa's head snapped up quick, protective. Declan lifted both hands, palms open. "Only if Tessa's okay with it," he said softly. Tessa stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Maisie, at the light in her daughter's eyes, at the way the child's world was finally expanding instead of shrinking. Tessa swallowed hard. "Uncle is okay," she said quietly, "as long as we remember who is Mommy." Declan's voice barely held when he answered. "Always." And for the first time since this strange journey began, the apartment didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a doorway. The first morning in the new apartment, Tessa woke before her alarm. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the stove like it was a test she hadn't studied for. The fridge was stocked with basics, milk, eggs, fruit, bread arranged with quiet care. Declan had done that, and she hated how much it helped. Maisie patted in, wearing an oversized t-shirt that reached her knees. "Mommy," she yawned, rubbing one eye. "Do we have pancakes?" Tessa laughed once, surprised by the sound. "We can try." The pancakes weren't perfect. Some were too thin, some too thick, one slightly burnt. Maisie ate them like they were the best thing in the world. "This tastes like home," she declared seriously. Tessa's throat tightened. She leaned down and kissed her daughter's hair. "It is home." Later that week, Marisol arranged a school visit. Declan offered to drive, but Tessa declined. "I'll take the bus," she said firmly. "We need to learn our own route." Declan didn't argue. He only nodded and gave her one thing, a printed map of the bus stops highlighted in yellow. Tessa took it, reluctant gratitude flickering across her face. The school was cheerful, bright walls, clean hallways, children's drawings everywhere. Maisie clung to Tessa's hand, at first her eyes wide, taking in the noise and color. A teacher greeted her with warmth. "Hi, Maisie. We've been waiting for you." Waiting. The word struck Maisie like a soft blanket. Tessa sat with the administrator to discuss enrollment. The numbers made her stomach tighten. Tuition supplies, after-school options. Declan, who had joined them only because Marisol asked him to attend for resource questions, kept his voice measured. "Are there scholarships?" he asked, careful not to claim ownership of the conversation. The administrator smiled. "Yes. There's an aid program." Tessa's shoulders lowered by half an inch. Not relief exactly, more like hope, finally having a place to sit. On the way home, Maisie skipped beside her, holding a small welcome folder like it was treasure. "I saw a library," Maisie said breathlessly, "and a slide, and a classroom with a fish tank." Tessa smiled, but her mind was already spinning work schedules, bills, stability. That night, after Maisie fell asleep, Tessa sat at the tiny kitchen table and stared at her phone. Declan had texted once, "Do you need anything?" She didn't answer. Not because she didn't need help, because she needed to prove she could survive without asking. The next day, she started job searching with a fierce kind of pride. Resume templates, online listings, walking into offices that smelled like polished floors and polite rejection. Declan didn't interfere. He stayed back like he promised. But Rowan the investigator sent Declan something unexpected, a single message from a business contact. "Is it true you're involved with a missing child reunion media might find out? Be careful." Declan read it twice, jaw tightening. He didn't fear headlines for himself. He feared them for Maisie. So he called Marisol. "No press," he said immediately. "No photos, no social media, nothing. I want her protected." Marisol's voice was firm. "Good. We keep it private, child first." That same week, Tessa landed an interview at a mid-sized company with a training program. She went alone. She wore a borrowed blouse from the shelter's donation closet, ironed as carefully as if it were silk. When she returned, Maisie was waiting by the window. "How was it?" Maisie asked. Tessa crouched and took her hands. "I did my best," she said. Maisie nodded solemnly. "That's what matters." 2 days later, Tessa got the call. She got the job. She held the phone against her ear and closed her eyes, swallowing hard. When she hung up, Maisie looked up at her with quiet understanding. Mommy Tessa forced a smile through tears that finally slipped free. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. Maisie hugged her waist tightly. "I knew it." That evening, Declan visited only because Tessa invited him. He brought nothing but a small folder, scholarship forms, childcare options, and a note with 3 words written at the top. "Your choices first." Tessa stared at the paper for a long time. Then she looked up at him, voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for not pushing." Declan nodded, his own eyes shining. "Thank you for letting me learn how." In the next room, Maisie lay on her bed, holding her teddy bear, and listening to their voices through the wall. Not fighting, not disappearing, just talking. And in the quiet between sentences, a fragile new family kept building itself brick by careful brick. It started with a doorbell, a simple sound that made Tessa's hands go cold. Declan stood behind her in the apartment's narrow entryway posture, calm but attentive. He had asked before making the suggestion twice. "Meet a small part of my family. Only if you're ready. Only if it helps not hurts." Tessa wasn't sure she would ever feel ready, but she had watched Maisie light up at the idea of more people who might not leave. So she agreed with conditions. Small Tessa had insisted. "No grand reunion, no cameras, no speeches," Declan promised. Small. Now the doorbell rang again. Tessa opened the door slowly. An older couple stood there, dressed neatly but not extravagantly, Harlan Cross 62 and Vivian Cross 60. Their expressions carried something complicated: curiosity, guilt, and fear of saying the wrong thing. Behind them stood 2 younger adults, Declan's cousin Evan Cross 33 and Evan's wife Sloane 31, both smiling too tightly, like people walking into a room full of history they didn't understand. "Hello," Tessa said, voice steady but quiet. "I'm Tessa." Vivian's eyes immediately found Maisie. Maisie stood half hidden behind Tessa's leg, teddy bear clutched to her chest. Her gaze was huge and serious, measuring the moment. Vivian's hand rose to her mouth. "Oh," she whispered. She's beautiful." Harlan cleared his throat. "Thank you for letting us come," he said, formal but sincere. The beginning was awkward, like trying to fit new words into an old mouth. Tessa gestured them inside. The apartment looked suddenly smaller with 4 extra people in it. The table was simple pasta, salad, bread, lemonade. No luxury, no show. Declan had insisted on one rule: Tessa chooses the atmosphere. Maisie surprised everyone by stepping forward. "Are you my grandma?" she asked Vivian. Vivian froze, then let out a small, startled laugh that turned into tears. I suppose I might be, she said softly, if you'll let me. Maisie considered, then nodded once. Okay. The tension loosened a fraction. Evan asked Maisie about school. Sloane complimented Tessa's cooking. The conversation slowly found its rhythm like a radio tuning into the right station. Then Harlan mentioned a name. Margaret, he said, voice heavier. Tessa's mother. Tessa's spine stiffened. Her mother's name always carried a sharp edge even in memory. She was complicated, Tessa said carefully. Vivian nodded. We didn't treat her fairly. Silence fell thick and honest. Declan set his fork down. We need to say this out loud, he said, calm but firm. The family made choices, cruel choices. We cut her off. We erased a branch of our own tree, and we never went looking. Harlan's jaw tightened. Your father, Declan, lifted a hand. No excuses. Tessa's eyes burned. She didn't want pity. She didn't want apology speeches. She wanted something that mattered. Why now, she asked, voice low. Why show up now after all this time? Vivian's hands trembled. Because we didn't know, she said softly. And because we should have. And because, when I look at her, she glanced at Maisie. I see the cost of our pride. Maisie looked between them, sensing the weight, but not afraid. She climbed onto her chair and set her teddy beside her plate. I don't like when people disappear, she announced quietly. The adults froze. Maisie continued, voice small but clear. My mommy came back. Uncle Declan came back. If you come, can you come back too? The question wasn't accusatory. It was innocent, and it landed like a verdict. Harlan's eyes filled. He nodded slowly. Yes, he said hoarsely. If you'll have us. Vivian reached across the table, not touching Maisie without permission, just letting her hand rest near the child's teddy bear. We will come back, she whispered, and we will be careful with your heart. Tessa's breath caught. For the first time, her fear didn't feel like armor. It felt like something she could set down just for a moment. After dinner, Harlan stood with a glass of lemonade, voice shaking. I'd like to make a toast, he said. Tessa flinched, already bracing for something dramatic. But Harlan's words were simple. To Maisie, he said. For reminding us what we forgot. He looked at Tessa. And to Tessa, welcome home if you want that word. Tessa didn't speak. She couldn't. Maisie broke the silence by raising her cup with both hands. To not being alone, she said. Everyone echoed it softly. And as the night ended with hugs that asked permission and goodbyes that didn't feel final, Declan walked Tessa to the door. You did great, he whispered. Tessa's eyes glistened. So did you, she answered. Then after a pause, she added the sentence that changed the air between them. Next time, you can bring cookies. Declan smiled quietly, stunned by the trust inside that ordinary word. Next time, he promised. And this time it didn't feel like a wish. It felt like a plan. Life began to look normal. That was the part that scared Tessa the most. Mornings filled with schedules, breakfast, backpacks, bus routes. Maisie learned how to tie her shoes slowly and proudly, while humming a tune she didn't remember learning. The apartment smelled like soap and toast instead of fear. Declan kept his distance just like he promised. Too much distance sometimes. He missed Maisie's first spelling quiz, missed a school assembly where she stood on stage and waved, scanning the crowd. Missed it because of meetings that couldn't move and responsibilities that never asked permission. When he finally visited one evening, Maisie ran to him, teddy bear tucked under her arm. You didn't come yesterday, she said. Not accusing, just noticing. Declan crouched. I know. I'm sorry. Tessa watched from the kitchen, her expression unreadable. Later, after Maisie fell asleep, Tessa spoke quietly. You don't have to disappear to prove you respect boundaries, she said. Declan stiffened. I thought giving space was the right thing. It is, she replied. But space can feel like leaving. The words hung between them. Declan nodded slowly. Tell me how to do better. Before Tessa could answer, his phone buzzed. A message from his legal team. Media inquiry received. Someone noticed the foundation paperwork. Advise caution. Declan's jaw tightened. He put the phone face down. I'm trying to protect her, he said. So am I, Tessa replied, tension creeping into her voice. And sometimes protection means not being seen at all. The misunderstanding didn't explode, it settled. And that was worse. That night, Maisie woke from a dream and padded into the living room, rubbing her eyes. Are you mad? She asked softly. Both adults turned to her at once. No, Tessa said, kneeling. Never at you, Declan added. Maisie considered them, then hugged both at the same time. Okay, she said. Just don't be quiet for too long. They promised, but promises, Declan was learning, were only the beginning. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Not from a reporter, from Marisol. We need to review Maisie's case file again, she said. Standard process. No danger. But there's a complication. Tessa's hands went cold. What kind of complication? A procedural audit, Marisol explained. It happens when multiple resources are involved. Housing support, education, aid, family connections. Tessa heard only one word. Audit. By the time they arrived at Marisol's office, Maisie sensed something was wrong. She colored silently, her crayon pressing harder than usual. Declan arrived last, face serious. Marisol laid out the facts calmly. There's no threat to custody, she said clearly, but a review panel will want assurances that Maisie's environment is stable without dependency on a single benefactor. Tessa's chest tightened. Are you saying she could be taken? No, Marisol said firmly. I'm saying we need to be precise. Declan spoke carefully. I'll step back further if needed. Tessa snapped before she could stop herself. You can't just vanish every time something gets complicated. Silence fell. Maisie looked up. Why are you using big voices? Tessa froze, immediately ashamed. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Marisol intervened gently. This is stress, not conflict. But later outside, Tessa turned to Declan, eyes blazing with fear. I won't lose her again, she said. Not to paperwork, not to rich misunderstandings. Declan absorbed the words without defensiveness. You won't, he said quietly. And I won't be the reason anyone questions your ability to be her mother. He made a decision then, one that hurt. He canceled 2 planned visits, asked Marisol to list him as a secondary support, not a daily presence. Maisie noticed immediately. You're quieter, she told him on the phone. Like before. Declan closed his eyes. I'm still here. But you're further, she said simply. That night, Declan sat alone, staring at the ring in its case. For the first time, he wondered if loving a child meant knowing when to step away, even if it felt like breaking your own heart. The review meeting arrived faster than anyone wanted. A small conference room, neutral walls, clipboards, no raised voices, no accusations, just questions. How is childcare managed? What happens if support changes? Who makes daily decisions? Tessa answered steadily. She spoke about routines, budgets, bus routes, meal plans, about her job, about Maisie's teacher and favorite books. Declan spoke last and briefly. I'm not a solution, he said calmly. I'm a resource. The solution is her mother. The panel noted it. The meeting ended without drama. Still, the tension lingered. That evening, Tessa sat on the apartment floor folding laundry, while Maisie arranged stuffed animals in a careful row. This one is Mommy, Maisie said, placing the teddy. This one is me. She hesitated, then placed a smaller bear slightly off to the side. This one is Uncle Declan. He lives here, but not here. Tessa smiled sadly. That's a good way to put it. Maisie looked up. Is that okay? Tessa paused. Yes, as long as he doesn't disappear. The next day, Declan knocked, invited. He didn't bring papers or plans. He brought cookies, store-bought, ordinary. Maisie laughed. You remembered I did, he said. They sat on the floor eating cookies, talking about school and silly things. No heavy topics. Later, when Maisie went to brush her teeth, Tessa faced Declan. I was wrong, she said quietly. About some things. So was I, he replied. They agreed on something new, not distance, not closeness, consistency. Declan would come once a week. Always the same day, always on time. No surprises. Maisie returned and clapped. That's easy. And for the first time in weeks, the air felt lighter. But somewhere beneath that calm, something bigger was approaching. Paperwork, judges, final decisions, the kind that don't care about cookies. The courtroom was smaller than Tessa expected. No drama, no shouting, just wood benches, quiet breathing, and a judge who listened more than he spoke. Maisie sat beside Tessa, feet not touching the floor, hands folded around her teddy bear. She didn't understand the words being used, but she understood the tone. Serious, careful, important. Marisol spoke first. Clear facts, calm structure. Then Tessa. She didn't beg. She didn't perform. She talked about mornings and lunches, about bus rides and bedtime songs, about how Maisie slept better when the door was left open a crack. Declan spoke last. I'm not here to claim anything, he said, only to support what already exists. The judge looked at him for a long moment. And you're willing to reduce your role if that's what's best for the child. Declan didn't hesitate. Yes. Silence followed. Heavy, final. Then the decision. Maisie would remain with her mother. Support would continue, structured, limited, reviewed. Declan's role approved, family contact. No authority, no control. The gavel came down softly. Tessa exhaled for the first time in weeks. Maisie looked up. Mommy, are we okay? Tessa smiled through tears. Yes, sweetheart. We're okay. Declan nodded once, quietly accepting the cost of loving well. Outside, the air felt lighter. Not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was uncertain anymore. Tessa hugged Maisie tightly, her hands shaking just a little. You did great in there, she whispered. Maisie shrugged. I just sat. That mattered, Tessa said. Declan stood a few steps away, giving space like he'd learned to do. When Tessa looked up, she surprised him by walking over first. Thank you, she said. Not formally, not defensively, just honestly. You don't owe me anything, Declan replied. I know, she said. That's why it matters. Maisie tugged on Declan's sleeve. You're still coming on Tuesdays, right? He smiled. Every Tuesday. She nodded, satisfied. Good. That night, back in the apartment, Tessa cooked pasta while Maisie set the table, crooked forks, mismatched plates. It's not fancy, Maisie said. It's ours, Tessa answered. Later, as Maisie slept, Tessa sat alone on the couch, staring at the quiet room. Fear still existed, but it no longer ruled. For the first time, she felt steady. 1 year later, sunlight filled the apartment. Balloons bounced against the ceiling. Laughter echoed. Maisie stood in the middle of the room, 6 fingers held proudly in the air. It's my birthday, she announced. This time, everyone knew. Declan arrived on time Tuesday like always. No gifts too big. Just a book and a small box. Inside was the diamond ring. Maisie gasped. The shiny one. Declan knelt. It doesn't belong on the street anymore, he said. It belongs with family. Tessa's breath caught. I want you to keep it, Declan said gently. Not as money. As a reminder. Tessa nodded, unable to speak. Later, as cake was served and candles blown out, Maisie leaned over and whispered to Declan. My wish came true. What was it, he asked. She smiled. I'm not alone. As evening fell, Declan stepped back into the hallway, listening to mother and daughter laugh inside. The ring had come full circle. but the real treasure had always been the quiet choice to stay. Did this story leave a lasting impression on you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tap the end screen to see another heartwarming story waiting for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Until our next story.